once and for all explain the differences between sexual arousal and sexual desire?
Once and for all. Oh, that's a
Once
tall
and for
order.
all.
Because the definitions are always changing again as we understand more. But here is one thing that we know. We feel happy when happy things happen to us, right? So we all agree, and emotion researchers agree, that happiness is a responsive emotion. Sexual desire is exactly the same. So we desire sex when it feels good, when there's arousal, when there's a certain degree of response, when there's something that elicits it. And so when we think about arousal as being kind of the body's response in response to triggers, desire then is the motivation that arises out of arousal, right? So it's a kind of model where first one feels aroused and then you have desire for sex, as compared to I think older ideas and definitions of desire, which suggested, first you're horny and in the mood, and then you kind of seek
Right.
out a partner, and then you go through all this work to get aroused. There's far more scientific evidence suggesting that arousal comes first and then desire emerges from it.
That is very interesting. So the triggers have to come first.
Yeah, triggers are essential because sexual response is not automatic.
Right.
Now, there might feel like there's an automatic aspect to sexual response, right? You're watching TV and all of a sudden there's an erotic scene and you start to get excited, maybe lubricate, maybe have an erection or what have you. But there's still a trigger there that's eliciting
Yes,
it. There's
that's
still
the
the
trigger.
visual fantasy and trigger that is there. So there is those triggers are absolutely essential for the response to unfold.
Wow. I'm surprised that it's not the main narrative to everyone, that
Right.
like we have to
Yeah.
put the triggers everywhere. And
Yeah.
being like a sexual communication professor, to in my mind, a lot of communication things are triggers,
Hmm.
right? Like a little bit of maybe dirty talk, a little bit of,
Hmm.
adoration, a little bit of like maybe sexting, like all these communication things can be triggers, right?
Hmm. Hmm. For sure. And but what's interesting is one of the things that gets in the way is people's own inhibitions around that. So there's still these kind of this legacy of stigma and shame around dirty talk or
Hmm.
fantasies or
Yeah.
telling a partner what you like, and they all relate to communication. And so if we frame all of those as a form of communication, and then we emphasize what the science tells us, which is sexual communication is one of the best predictors of long-term sexual satisfaction. And we know that because the very, very large studies done out of the UK have shown us that sexual communication is a major predictor of long-term sexual satisfaction. Then maybe people start to have a bit more permission around things like sex talk and
Hmm.
fantasy and telling a partner about their pleasures and that sort of thing. But so we very much want to normalize these as tools and parts of a healthy sexual relationship.
I used to like never speak about sex in my relationship. And of course, I had a streak of, sexual dissatisfaction in my monogamous relationships, like on and on and on. A new boyfriend, and it was still like it was okay. It wasn't amazing. And mainly because I wasn't communicating the things that I want, the things that I desire. So
Mhm.
I'm definitely a huge advocate of communicating your desires. So you were talking about the differences, and I think that was an amazing explanation. So my next question would be, why do lots of women have, or they say they have low sexual desires, and is it
Mhm.
related to arousal?
Mhm. Oh, good. Yeah, really good question. And we know that low desire is the most common sexual concern. The big surveys suggest that maybe 1 in 3 women over the last year will
Yeah.
say that they've had a period of at least 3 months or more where their desire has been lower than what it has been in the past.
And it's like a
So,
common narrative. So I have
mhm.
quite a following on TikTok, and a lot of comments, a lot, like thousands of comments are saying, well, she never wants to have it.
Mhm.
She never
Yeah,
wants to have sex. So what's
right.
going on?
Yeah. So if we adopt this definition of desire, which is that, you kind of feel horny out of the blue, you feel in the mood for sex out of the blue, then yeah, that number is going to be very high. In fact, 30% is probably an underestimate, simply because we don't go through our day, spontaneously out of the blue, like an arrow hits us and we're in the mood for sex. That's just not the way that desire unfolds. So if we adopt that narrow definition, yeah, the numbers are going to be high, and people are going to say, oh my gosh, I have no desire because when I'm working, I'm not thinking about sex. And it's like, well, of course you're not.
Right,
You're doing your work, obviously. Okay, with some exceptions. The exception being if you're a sex researcher, a sexual communication expert, then you are thinking about sex. So so the first step in kind of debunking that myth is sharing this message of what sexual desire actually is, the much more common form of desire, which is, and essentially I asked the question, when you're engaging in consensual sexual activity, you're doing something that feels good, you're in the moment, you're enjoying it, your body starts to respond. Do you get to that point where eventually you want it? And if the person says, yeah, of course, I might not want it at the beginning, but I do want it once we start and it feels great and it feels fulfilling and rewarding, then I say, you have no problems with desire. You do not have a desire issue. You are experiencing a normal, common form of sexual desire that we call responsive desire. And so that's really the important distinction. So when your followers say to you, oh, I've lost my desire, that would be what I would want to find out is, okay, they might not have the kind of fairy tale notion of desire, which is it hits you like an arrow out of the blue, but do they have this responsive desire that emerges? And if so, thumbs up.
And what if they say they don't have that?
Then we do start to look at the rest of the sexual response cycle, like the triggers for arousal. We look at people's reasons for engaging in sex, because sometimes people just don't have any reasons. They say, I don't see the point. I don't get anything out of it. My partner, I don't think they get anything out of it. Our relationship doesn't benefit. It doesn't help me sleep, doesn't help me feel better. I don't have an orgasm. So that is also a really critical part that moves people from neutral towards being open, is having some reasons. And there's been a lot of research looking at reasons for sex, and the fact that people can actually adopt and try on new reasons that they hadn't thought of before. Like, oh yeah, sex helps me relax, or it helps me sleep better, or I feel really empowered and strong after sex. And that's a great motivator to have sex, on top of more maybe traditional relationship related reasons. It helps us feel closer, we feel connected, it's a way to express desire and passion and love. So having reasons for sex is something we can really cultivate and think about.